Hello and welcome to FidelityNext. I'm your host, Tamara Radachai. Whether you're a student, recent graduate, or looking to make moves in your career, the start of the year is the perfect time to position yourself for a new opportunity. On top of the experience roles currently available at Fidelity, we're in the middle of our campus recruitment period, on the lookout for co-op students and interns for summer 2025. Today we're here with staffing specialist Magda Kajo, who's going to give us some insights and tips on how to get through the recruitment process with ease and confidence. Magda, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the FidelityNext stage.
Thanks for having me again, Tamara.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah.
Let's start things off with what you do at Fidelity, kind of how you got here, and maybe a little bit about what the culture's like here.
Sure. To start off, I was at Fidelity for 2 co-op terms, or as an intern actually. The first one, summer 2022, in Fidelity Canada's risk management team, and then I came back summer 2023 as a student for Fidelity Investment Canada's product research team. Loved it so much, and then I actually got the opportunity to get what's known as a regular role or a permanent role as a staffing specialist bilingual, so I get to use my French a bit in this role as well, and I'm essentially part of the talent acquisition team, so myself and a few of the other recruiters, we're the ones that help managers in the hiring process.
So you're the ones people have to impress first along the process.
To an extent.
Yeah. So speaking of recruitment process, can you tell us what that process looks like, whether it's for students or experienced people, maybe how long it takes?
Sure, yeah, so to start off with the students, essentially our applications are actually live now. So super exciting to have that available for summer of this year. And after students get their applications in, basically that team of campus recruiters, they go through all the applications, create a short list for the managers to review, and then they contact candidates accordingly. After that, the interview process that students can expect is really a panel interview with the campus recruiter, the hiring manager for that role, and also what's known as an adjacent manager, so a manager probably in the same department. And that's just to make sure that the students are able to be properly assessed for the role, both for their current skill set, but also for potential in terms of growth in that role or any other roles at Fidelity that could be a better fit. For full-time recruitment, that's more my area of expertise. There, it's very simple in terms of the fact that our team of recruiters are really great with outlining the process. So you would start off with what's known as a phone screen. Mm-hmm. So after we receive online applications and we go through that same sort of shortlist process, we call candidates that we think could be a good fit. If all goes well, in terms of making sure that they align with the educational requirements, the professional work experience, years of experience, any designations, then we move them on to the interview round with the hiring manager. And depending on the role, it could be a few rounds. So it could be with just the hiring manager. After that, it could be with more senior levels of management, even at some points even meeting with the team. And from there, that's when we get the offer process started. But all in all, the process probably takes somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay, good to know. And then you mentioned, obviously, we're taking resumes right now for students looking for the summer term. When crafting a resume, is there anything that a student who's looking for a co-op term or internship that they can put on the resume to really stand out?
Yeah, so I think for students it's sometimes hard because they always want to make sure that they have enough experience or that they really are able to showcase themselves, make themselves stand out. Really, it's nice to keep a resume simple. Keep it on one page, especially for students. Really highlight, of course, your education, so where you're going to school, what you're studying, and any experience that you have. Now, if you don't have too much maybe professional experience, really highlight other areas where you have gained experience, like extracurriculars, so if you're involved on campus or even off campus with volunteering or any sports activities, that sort of thing. And then from that, try to keep it concise in the sense that if you also want to include experiences from the last 5 years, it's nice to keep things fresh. If you have an experience from before then that you think is really relevant to include, you can include it in a bottom section of the resume known as like additional interests, affiliations. You can also mention it in the interview as well, and also in a cover letter.
Cool. So on an interview, I know one thing that's pretty consistent is like a statement, a personal statement, or like an objective. Is there like a formula for that, for kind of how that should be formatted? And can you give us an example?
Yeah, so more older formats use objective, but newer formats now put this part together as a profile. So really, it's the same as if, let's say, you're in a networking event. What are the first things you talk about with someone? Well, of course, you introduce yourself, your name, where you go to school, what you do for work, or what areas you're interested in working in. And that's kind of what you want to showcase in your profile as well. You want to talk about whether you're an undergraduate, in what year, or if you're already a graduate, what school you've gone to, what are some of your professional areas of interest or some fields that you're looking to get into. And from there, it'll give the hiring team at least a nice little summary of who you are. And it's the same thing even on LinkedIn, for example. They kind of push you to make that summary. It's very similar in that sense. So if you think about it in terms of just some of those key facts about yourself, it will be much easier to craft and it'll be more natural instead of it being something that you're not too sure about.
And should those be kind of quick and simple and to the point?
Yeah, if you keep it to a couple of bullet points, it would be nice. So you could say something like, driven undergraduate student, currently in third year, for example, looking to pursue a role in data analysis or things like that. And you can even mention the name of the role if you're applying to a few different roles. So depending on what you see for Fidelity's website, that title there, you can even include it in your resume and it'll stand out. And that way you can also show how it matches with your interests.
Great. And then what about cover letters? Is that something that students in particular should keep in mind? And if so, what's something that they can include in that?
Definitely, especially if they're applying to multiple roles. So a cover letter is great because it really lets you dive deeper into your experience. Try to keep it to a page though. So you want to start off with, of course, expressing your interest in that role. And then from there, you want to focus on highlighting maybe 3 key skills that you have that also match with what the job posting says. And the job posting is really key for people to pay attention to because it gives you a really great summary of what the role is about, and also tells you a lot about what you can expect to do in the role and the skills that the team is looking for. So really using that to your advantage in the cover letter will be great, and taking each of those 3 skills, diving a bit deeper into your past experiences, and from there you're also able to showcase any concrete examples. That would be great. And then you can just end it off with thanking the team for their time and consideration. But yeah, keep it a page just like your resume.
Great. And then we've talked about this in this series a few times, but I know with Fidelity's recruitment process, we don't use AI to screen for resumes. So when someone is crafting theirs, what's something they can keep in mind knowing that it is going to be people that are, the first ones to see it?
Yeah, so I think a great resource, at least for students, is in fact their school's career centers or even their co-op departments if they're part of a co-op program, because they can really help you tailor your resumes and your cover letters to whichever job you're trying to apply to. And that way it's much more natural. With AI, sometimes if you try to do too much with it, it'll make it in a way that's not authentic, or it's a bit jumbled, and it'll use long sentences or maybe really sophisticated words that really don't make that much sense. It's nice to keep your resume and your cover letter simple, to the point, because we get a lot of applications, not just us, but even other companies as well. And you want to make sure that the time that the team does dedicate to looking at your application, they're able to get a really good sense of who you are, and in a way that's a nice, clean snapshot of where you are currently in your life and what you're trying to pursue professionally. So really using those resources at school is great. And then there's also a bunch of templates online. I'm not saying to, don't copy and paste. You definitely want to tailor it and make it more authentic to you. But there's tons of resources online as well. Cool.
So moving on from resumes to interviews now, what would you say are the top 3 questions someone can ask a hiring manager? And would those differ in different industries?
Yeah, so it's great for people to actually take that opportunity. I know some people don't always take the opportunity to ask questions. Maybe they might be a bit nervous, but it's great to get your questions in there at the end. We always dedicate a few minutes at the end of an interview. You want to first start off by asking any questions about things that you're not clear about, whether it's for the posting or anything you've heard in the interview, because you really want to leave that interview with a good sense of what that job will require of you. And in turn, you also want to make sure the hiring team is leaving that interview having a good sense of who you are professionally and your potential fit on the team. With that being said, in terms of some questions you can ask what the ideal candidate is. So that way it'll give the manager a chance to really talk a bit more about the skills that they're looking for, if there's any specific designations they're looking for, and how they see this person or that role contributing to the team. Something else you can also ask is what the day-to-day looks like. Sometimes you can't always get that from a posting, so the manager will be able to tell you that. Asking what the team structure is like, or who might be your frequent collaborators, or are there specific roles on the team that you can expect to work closely with, or are there other departments that maybe your role is more closely tied to? And then in terms of training as well, so if there's a particular training, I know for our student program, for example, aside from the job-specific training that we also give students general training. So in terms of perfecting their communication skills, presentation skills, even emotional intelligence. So some really, really interesting areas that they're able to dive in further. Another thing to ask as well, if you're a student, so we have student ambassadors on campus that they're able to give you a pretty good sense of what a term at Fidelity would look like. Spoiler, it's pretty great. So from there, you're able to then ask them a bit more. So I've even had students always ask me about like the case competition. So something that we do every term at Fidelity, based around a topic. I remember when I was a student, I did it, and I really loved working on that with my team. I mean, I made friends, of course, from it, but I also learned a lot.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's really nice to know what you can ask in anticipation of a term that you're actually interested in pursuing, right? So, do your research and know what is actually happening in the student program so you can ask about it and show that you did your research.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you're in an interview and someone asks you a question that like totally stumps you and you have no idea what to say, what would you do in that case?
Be honest and say you're not sure.
Yeah.
It's much better than trying to pull something out of thin air because you can tell. So be honest and say you're not sure. It's totally fine to even ask for, if you can have a minute to maybe think of an example. If you really can't think of something, try to walk the team through how you would handle that situation hypothetically. So for example, a common question we ask in interviews is, tell us about a time when you had to multitask. And if multitasking is something that's very important for the role, they're definitely going to ask you something around that. So what you can do is, let's say if you're not sure, you really can't pull a concrete example together, you can talk about how, what you would work with a team on coming together with a list of tasks and prioritizing them based on their due dates. Giving that kind of answer would show the team that, first of all, you're organized and you're someone that's a team player, you're someone who wants to keep communication lines open, and really you're someone who's self-sufficient. You're not going to be, kind of a deer in headlights. You're going to be someone who really wants to take initiative and will be a problem solver at the end of the day. So those are all skills that no matter what position you're in, the team always wants to see.
And in that same vein, what's something that you find a lot of people worry about a lot in interviews that they really shouldn't worry about too much?
Yeah, so similarly, tied to that, they want to try to seem perfect. So no one's perfect, and we know that. We know that especially for interviews, it can be a nerve-wracking process. So it's totally fine to just, if you make a mistake, tell the team, I'm sorry, or maybe if you mumbled on a word, that's totally fine. And then always just try to highlight your skills more so and try to pull concrete examples from your past experiences where you're able to showcase your best qualities. Something else that you can do sort of to prepare for interviews is to even go online and look at like common interview questions. It sounds simple enough, but obviously it doesn't mean that the question that you see online are going to be exactly what is asked of you, but at least it puts you into that mind frame for you to prepare and to start thinking of real life examples that you've gone through. For example, a time that you've handled a challenge at work, a time that you've multitasked, which we just talked about, a time that you were able to contribute to a team project, things like that, general questions that'll help you get into that mind frame, and that way with that preparation hopefully you'll be less nervous.
And then once the interview's over, from a recruiter's perspective, what would you say is like a good level of follow-up after the fact?
Yeah, so you can really use that time as well in that little question period at the end of the interview to ask the team, when you can expect to hear an answer back, and they'll typically tell you if it's 2 weeks or longer than that, and they'll also usually tell you where they are in the process if they're anticipating another round of interviews, for example. So what you can do after that is you can send a nice thank you note within, I'd say, 24 hours of the interview, and that way when the 2 weeks comes up, you can follow up directly from that thank you note. It's a nice touch, but also it's something to keep you in the loop, and that way the recruiter will either tell you if there is an update or they'll tell you that they're still going through the process.
I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what would you say are some of the best ways to network, and what's a good sort of intro statement someone could say to someone when they meet at an event?
Yeah, so networking, it's great because you can do it formally and informally. So more formally, you think of, if you're a student, campus events, when companies come to your school, career fairs. I know at Fidelity we had one a few months ago and it was great. And then also as a recruiter, my team and I go to those often. Mm-hmm. And those are great opportunities for you to showcase yourself. If you want to also bring maybe a copy of your resume to these sorts of events, that's great too, because you're able to really have something tangible to give a recruiter or someone from that company to then move forward and keep you in mind, so to speak. And you can also talk about sort of your qualities and your skills and sort of opportunities that you're looking for directly from having your resume there. In terms of an interest statement, similar to what I mentioned about the profile and the resume, I mean, the first things you want to start off with in a conversation is, what your name is, where you go to school, what you do for work, or what you're interested in, and you hope that the other person will reciprocate and it'll turn into a conversation and things will flow much more naturally. Informally, you can really reach out to your own personal network if you have friends, or friends of friends, family. They're ones that can also help you do some networking on the side. Networking is also really important when it comes to being on the job hunt. But a network will only get you so far. Of course, you have to actually get through the door yourself. But networking is something that you should really be able to leverage when you're on the job hunt.
Yeah, and building on that, what are your thoughts on coffee chats?
So I think coffee chats are a great tool when you use them effectively. So the rule of thumb that even when myself when I was a student, I was networking, was quality over quantity. So don't just have a coffee chat for the sake of having one. If you are approaching someone for a coffee chat, make sure that you actually prepare, you do your research on that person's profile, on the industry they're in or the role they're in. When you approach it from a perspective of wanting to learn more and actually explore that person's profile, so to speak, their professional profile, you're going to be able to get a much better response versus approaching a situation as like an informal interview or you want to get on their team. I mean, it goes without saying that you're trying to network and you're trying to get your foot into the door into that industry, but you can do it in a way that is much more natural, and hopefully from that coffee chat you can walk away with a few takeaways, a few pearls of wisdom, so to speak, from the people that you're talking to. And you can do that when you're a student internally in an organization, or even if you're not currently working. Again, through that network, you can ask people for coffee chats. Some people are more responsive if you do like a cold reach out, or if you have a mutual connection, you can ask them to do maybe an introduction or like a real life introduction if you meet someone somewhere. And then walking away from that coffee chat with some of those key takeaways, it'll help you in the long run, because you never know, you can gain like a really great mentor for you in terms of your long-term career development, and of course the possibility of a job. You never know in the future too, but you shouldn't go into it with that. You should really go into it from a sense of wanting to learn more.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn about different companies and stuff too, right? Different people's experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for the students who are currently wanting to pursue either an internship or co-op, what's some advice that you would have for them? Students or new grads, actually, anyone kind of in that realm.
Yeah, I would say keep your mind open to opportunities. Obviously, try to align yourself with your interests, so in your skills, and really keep your ear to the ground in terms of what are areas maybe in the industries that are coming out that are newer that you maybe like to explore, especially now that you're younger in your career, you're more junior. You're able to have that benefit of being able to explore and not necessarily having to have your mind 100% made up. I think even once you graduate, those first few years of your career are really pivotal and are really important for you to take advantage of in terms of exploring different areas or different interests that you have. And eventually, I really think that you will find your way. You never know sort of where opportunities lead you. Even for myself, like I started off more so in mutual fund research, and now I'm in human resources. So it wasn't exactly something that I thought about initially, but now that I'm here, I really, really enjoy it. So keeping your mind open to opportunities, and especially when you're newer in your career, saying yes more than you say no, and that can also be a confidence thing too. You never want to stop yourself. You want to take a shot. What's that saying? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So definitely take the shot. You never know.
And I think it's a great time to ask all the questions, right? Like you said, you're younger in your career, you can get away with asking all the questions. And if anything, actually, it's a nice mark of how interested you are in what the questions you ask, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Magda, one last question for you to end things off today. What's your favorite part about working at Fidelity in your full experience, beginning to end?
Great question. I'd say it's a two-part answer. So of course I love what I do as a recruiter, but I also love the team and I love the people here at Fidelity. So just touching a bit on in terms of what I do, I really love the fact that being a recruiter, I'm able to learn about so many different roles across the organization, and really learning about a lot of different areas of the business. And then from the people perspective, it sounds a bit cliche, but Fidelity really is a great place to work. So I've really loved my team. All my teams actually have always been super inclusive, super warm, super welcoming. And Fidelity's grown a lot too in the last few years. So of course, being a company that's seen so much growth, you have to be a company that adapts and is dynamic. And we often see that even online or in person, people love being part of the Fidelity culture, being collaborative, being open, and really learning from one another. I think that Fidelity provides so many amazing opportunities for growth if you really tap into them. And then, of course, connecting with your colleagues even outside of your day-to-day. For myself, for example, I'm involved in one of the employee resource groups here at Fidelity, Women in Leadership. So it's been amazing. I've met a lot of great colleagues through that group that I may have not had a chance to connect with as well. So yeah, I'd say all in all, I really love my time here.
Great, love to hear that. And it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
so much for having me.
Thanks to everyone else who tuned in for today's episode. We hope you're feeling inspired to embrace the fresh energy of the new year as you seek out new opportunities. And like I said at the start of the show, we're currently taking applications for our summer student term until January 24th. This is your chance to join other students across Canada for an award-winning experience. To those who want to apply, you can do that via careers.fidelity.ca. And you can also catch unlimited replays of this episode and others on Fidelity Canada's YouTube page under the FidelityNext playlist. Best of luck to all those job hunting, and we'll see you on the next episode.